If you don't know me, again, I'll just introduce myself. My name is Professor Jawwad Darr, Jawwad Arshad Darr. My father's called Arshad, he's passed away now. I want to talk about the challenges. You know, often in Pakistan, we don't talk about the challenges in Pakistan. We know there are challenges and we don't really know the size of the problem. I'm a scientist and I also run, I co-founded and I'm a member of a charity called UPSIGN. UPSIGN is the UK Diaspora charity. So that helps academics in the UK and also to connect to Pakistan. And this is now 5 years anniversary of this charity, UPSIGN is called. You can search it on upsign.org.uk. And we've done various events over the years. I won't talk too much about that. But a few years ago, as part of our work, I started to talk about, because we are scientists, I'm a physical scientist, I'm a chemist, I'm a material scientist, I work in energy storage, in batteries, about how are we going to solve the energy crisis and the challenge of energy storage and renewable energy. So I'm a chemist or a material scientist. But when we think about the problems that I'm working on in my research group in the UK, often we think in just a box of, okay, I'm doing batteries. We don't think about what else, why we need batteries, what the challenges are for people. If you don't understand those challenges, you can't really build the best battery that's fit for purpose for the place where the battery is going. So we must develop the solutions that are fit for purpose, okay? So I just want to talk about Pakistan challenges. Now, I just want to say a few disclaimers here. I'm going to be talking about things that I'm not an expert in. I'm just going to give you top level some ideas about what's going on. And because I work in this charity where there are lots of scientists, they're agriculture, water specialists, I interact with them and I've learned a little bit about what they're doing because we all work in a big team together. And I want to talk about Pakistan's challenges. I'm going to talk about the people in the UK. Now, you probably think that in the UK that everybody's doing really well if they're Pakistani. They're all successful, and the answer is they're not. My own journey, which I won't bore you with today, was a very difficult, long one. And yes, I'm a professor in UCL in a top university. But frankly, I'm a bit of an oddball in that sense that I'm probably more integrated than some of my colleagues. And so they are probably struggling even more than I did. And really, I just want you to understand that Pakistan has challenges, UK Pakistanis have challenges. They are part of Pakistan, actually, even though you don't know it. And then what I want to say is, how can Pakistanis and British Pakistanis work together? That's kind of the summary of what I'm going to talk about. And I'll try and go through quite quickly. Dinner is awaiting tonight at the Monal restaurant, so I'm looking forward to going there tonight. Okay, let's see if this thing works. Okay, so what, do you know there's about 9,200,000, let's do some numbers, 220 million, roughly, Pakistanis. Nobody really knows because a lot of people don't get even registered for births. Let's say 220 million. 9 million overseas Pakistanis. That number says 1.2 million British Pakistanis. It's about 1.4 now, I believe, because that slide's a bit old. So there are not that many in Canada, USA, half minute's probably gone up. So we are less than 4%, and we count ourselves as Pakistani, even though I'm not born in Pakistan, but I call myself British Pakistani. Most of the people in Pakistan, I mean the lecturers and the college lecturers from Pakistani backgrounds are actually born in Pakistan. Very few are born in UK actually. Because what happened was they got a really good education in Pakistan because they're from middle class, upper class families, and they then came over to become lecturers. Whereas people in the UK got a really poor education, so not many of them become lecturers. And this is the thing that you probably don't even realize. And so we have them in Middle East, more in the Middle East. And often, when we came to Pakistan, we didn't feel that anybody really accepted us. In fact, people still think I'm a Gora, which is fine. So often we think about challenges, think about UN Sustainable Development Goals. This has been talked about a lot. This is just a way of thinking about the problems in society around water, energy, gender equality, education. And it's sort of a framework put together by the UN, United Nations. And I think it's a really good way to frame challenges. Next slide, please. That's a picture of my dad, Arshad Darr. He came from Sialkot. So now Pakistan is, this is 212, say 220. In 1962, when my father arrived in the UK to do a portering, he was a porter, railway porter. He was lifting heavy bags. Life expectancy in Pakistan was about 47, it's now 67. Literacy rate was quite low, 62%, it's not very high. The great thing about Pakistan is obviously you've got this massive population explosion in Pakistan, but you have this massive resource, which I'm sure you all know about, is the youth. So about 60% of people are below the age of 30, and about half of them, which are what we call the youth, between the age of about 15 and 30, I think it is youth, the definition of youth. So about 30-something% are youths. So you have this really strange thing where you have lots of very young people, and you've got to educate them, and somehow they've got to create jobs for them. And this is a big problem. And actually, just to maintain the employment rates within youths, you've got to create like 1 million jobs per year just to keep it at the same levels it is now, which is a crazy thing to have to do. Now, this is a subject, obviously, education and poverty. There are lots of examples in Pakistan of situations where there are children that are bonded or families that are bonded because of poverty. There's a huge issue. Trapped in debt, I think the number I saw was child labour was about 3.3 million. Okay, it doesn't seem like a huge number in the bigger figures. I think the things that really worry me is that in certain regions in Pakistan, there's basically a large percentage of children not even getting basic education. So they're trapped in poverty for the rest of their lives, essentially. The other thing is 1/5 of females married by 18 years old. In fact, my mother, who came from Old Lahore, was married at 17. And she came over on a slightly dodgy passport, let's say. She married my father. But she was desperate to get an education. She wanted to be a doctor. And as soon as she got married, suddenly all the children arrived. And, she had no options to study. And so this for her, even today, I can see that in her wish that she had become a doctor or something. And, so that my mother was very much, tried to do it through other people, I guess. And 3% of females get married by the age of 15. So what are their prospects for getting an education? But these are cultural things. I'm not here to say this is bad, this is good. I just want to make you aware of these numbers. I'm not judging. Who am I to judge, right? And the horriblest number is that there are, out of the school education children from 5 to 16, there's about 20 million across Pakistan that are out of school, that should be in school. 20 million. Next slide, please. And actually, if you do it by region, some regions in particular, as you might expect, are doing particularly worse. Balochistan, the percentage out of school is 47%. A lot of people don't even ever get to a school, anywhere near a school. And of course, there are cultural reasons for that. They're required to work because the family is poor. They may be given, they're worried about the girls getting, particularly girls, being abducted or whatever issues they may have or worries. So the total it's 32%, it's 20 million are out of school that should be in school. And you can look at it by the regions. I won't read from the slides, but Balochistan in particular, 40% out of school, it's 2 million in a very rural area. In Punjab, it's 24% of who should be in school are out of school, and it's 7 million. 7 point something million. It's huge numbers. And you think, well, in Punjab, this would not be such an issue, right? But it's not true. So these are all these, I've cited the articles where I got this from. I've updated some of the slides, and I hope you feel free to check out the sources. Another interesting thing is at the bottom, it's the currently number of enrolled students, 5 to 16 years, which is the school age. On the other axis is percentage of children. What we see is initially at 5 years, there's like less than 45%. So the numbers, I should say, the top color is boys, the average is in the middle, and the girls are the orange one. Okay? Now, if we look across the age 5, 6, 7, you see a slight increase in the number of people enrolled. In fact, it goes as high, the average goes to high about 80% across the whole of Pakistan. And that is because the availability of schools at that age, there's much more schools available at the younger age group. And of course, so this is one of the reasons why people do that. But what you see then is as soon as they get to puberty in particular, the girls, so they're getting sort of 12, 13, 14, it drops off dramatically. So that, the average says is about 50% or something like that. 52% is the average of, so at age 16, that means 52% of children are out of school at age 15 across the whole of Pakistan. That's what it means. So there's this drop-off that happens as they get older because maybe they're required to work, to support the family. Again, I'm not judging. I just want you to know that these are the facts. Let's talk about the economy of Pakistan. I had to update this a little bit. So there's this thing called PPP, which is the price of a basket of goods. So in terms of Pakistan, when you normalize for that, it's 23rd largest economy. Its GDP, gross domestic product, is about $360 billion in 2022. Now, is that a big sum? Well, it's the 23rd largest sum in a sense, and much of the the income of Pakistan comes from services, industry, agriculture is obviously massive. You know that. What particularly bothers me is that, particularly in areas like agriculture, a lot of the food actually goes off before it actually gets to the place it's supposed to get to. I mean, if you talk about seafood, for example, I would not eat seafood in Pakistan because it's for somebody like me with a weak British stomach. I mean, there's a whole issue around the whole transportation of food, and so seafood in particular is particularly hazardous. But a lot of food is basically going off because of the transportation of to the market, which is which should be avoidable. Okay, so these are things. Don't get too sad, sir. There's some good stuff coming, hopefully, or I'll try and keep it positive. So, good laugh, well done. But the debt is particularly the worrying thing. The national debt, the total national debt, including foreign debt and other types of debt. I mean, it has risen remarkably. And so what happens is when you get into these high levels of debt, and by the way, there are lots of countries with high levels of debt. Japan has got more debt than you realize, but then it also has assets, you see? So you can have high levels of debt. So it's not a one-way thing. But in a country like Pakistan, the debt has spiraled because what we've done is Pakistan has decided we're going to gamble, we're going to borrow all this money, we're going to build our roads, we're going to do our infrastructure, we're going to create our economy. So they have taken that gamble, and it's not for me to decide or you to decide whether this is going to be successful. We've taken it, and that's what it is. So this huge debt has to be serviced, which means you have to pay the interest. Eventually, you have to pay the interest. And so what happens is you end up just servicing the debt. You're not reducing the rakam, you are just paying the interest. And this is what's going to happen, and this is crazy numbers it's grown by. For example, the foreign debt, about a third of our foreign debt in Pakistan is to China. So that also has political ramifications as well, because if you owe somebody that much money, you're probably not going to speak out about certain things, or you probably be politically, you're kind of linked, right? You don't really have a choice. And I think we all know that, right? I mean, I hope it's not anything controversial. I don't want to say anything controversial today.
It's perfectly all right.
Like I said, I'm not, some people, it's not an issue. Okay, I want you to make up your own minds. I'm not giving anybody think like this or that. I'm saying, please make up your own minds today. This is a forum where free thinking is encouraged. You make up your own minds, and maybe go and look into it in more detail, and then make up your own mind. Why not do that? And so, Pakistan is trying to build its universities, its infrastructure, so we can create knowledge, and from that knowledge we can create products. Next slide, please. Okay, so some of the problems I'm going to point out. So there is the issues around water. Water has massive issues. So obviously we get hydroelectric power, about 30-odd% of power comes from hydroelectric. So we always think of water as being plentiful because we have dams. But of course the issue is some of our farming practices are not optimized. So we are, in Punjab, for example, flood irrigation, that's how a lot of the fields are just flooding it with water. And of course, that's not the ideal mechanism for water. And so it's reckoned that Pakistan is already pretty much considered in the world a water scarce country. And there are lots of technical solutions by that. There's drip irrigation using solar powered pumps and things where you don't have to flood the field. So there are technical solutions to these things. So I don't think there's even a question of Pakistan doesn't know how to do these things. It's more the implementation, and particularly at the farmer level, where you have all kinds of other issues around feudal landlords and sort of, people obviously and debt. And so maybe the smallholders, which are a big part of Pakistan, they don't often have maybe some of the knowledge that they need, particularly around fertilizers and around seeds and the correct time to water as well. And I'll tell you about a solution. Actually, I'll mention it now. On the agriculture side, one of my colleagues from UPSIGN actually has developed it. It's called the Savi app, Savi, S-A-W-I-E, Savi. And what it does, it's a computer, it's basically, and it's going to become, he's going to integrate AI with it, artificial intelligence. What it does is it gives real-time satellite data on any smallholder's plot, and they can identify their plot from the satellite imagery, And it basically will look at the plot and work out whether, if you've planted crops there, it'll basically tell you, because it can see the color, it can basically see whether you need to water or not, and it'll give you advice about the right time of year to water or when to water. It gives advice. So it's basically an app that this guy invented, who's called Khalid Mahmood. He's a very strong, he's a good colleague of mine. He co-founded UPSIGN. And it was just a passion of his that he didn't have any money to do it. He just developed it on his own money. Then he got people on board and investors. And now this app called Savvy is really taking off, and he's got funding now to sort of develop it more, but he literally did this with his own pocket, and he developed an app, you know, and it really does help farmers. It's not going to solve all their problems, right, but it's something, isn't it? And of course, we all know about the fact, and Imran Khan also spoke when he showed the brain scan and said, we have a problem with the correct, we get enough calories, so we look healthy because we're big and healthy, but of course the most important thing is the minerals that we get and the type of nutrition, and this is what's lacking in a lot of children in Pakistan, unfortunately, because again it's just maybe lack of knowledge or implementation. Now of course they're adding zinc to wheat, and things have been added. You'll see products in the market now, and this is government level. I think initiatives are coming through, but we work with some of the people who are actually been doing the trials to grow crops that actually are high in zinc. So you don't need to add the zinc to the flour. It basically is built into the plant. So there are solutions again. And it's just about bringing knowledge, which is already in the world, to Pakistan. Let's talk about pesticides. Pakistan has a huge overuse of pesticide problem, because there's a lot of locusts and all kinds of other things that are affecting us. So what happens is people overuse pesticides. And those pesticides are harmful to humans. They're harmful to locusts, but they're harmful to humans as well. And so there were issues in the past with selling food abroad because of the pesticide problem, but there's also the issue of there is technology out there that if it could be brought to Pakistan, and one of them is called biopesticides. And what do biopesticides do? They basically degrade naturally over time. Okay, this has been invented already, and there are many British Pakistanis. In Swansea, there's a guy called Professor Tariq Butt. This is his area, and he's going to be, and I heard from him, they're trying to bring this to Pakistan, and obviously these people are also looking for financial gain as well. Let's be clear that if somebody comes and brings their technology, they're going to want to help Pakistan, but there may be some business element. And we call, to me, there are examples of businesses, and I'm not saying this is one, where there's the main purpose of the business, they're called social enterprises. The purpose of a social enterprise, by the way, is to do some good in the world, to help society, but then also make a profit. But it doesn't have to be exorbitant profit, right? Because anyway, nobody would buy it if it was so expensive. So I just want you to be aware that academia, businesses, spin-outs, these things can happen from universities, but at the end of the day, they have to sustain themselves. The businesses must sustain themselves, depending on the type of business it is. And certainly, I think biopesticides is one of the many solutions. There are also methods of trapping locusts and things which are actually, I'm not saying you can get rid of these issues, but I know scientists in the UK are working with Pakistanis on projects where they're basically looking at other methods of trapping insects by this, attracted to by smells and other things that draw them into traps. So there's knowledge out there. It's just about implementation. Next slide, please. Can I go? Okay, I want to talk about the whole of this slide because there's too much to talk about. Let's talk about energy. I'm interested in energy. So out of 220 million, and I said this in the last time I came, 220 million Pakistanis, about 50 million are off-grid. They have no access to any kind of regular electricity in the mountainous areas or the countryside or whatever. And Pakistan's got huge potential for solar and wind. And I'm not saying it would provide all of our energy needs. Next slide, please. This is something I picked up recently. So if we look at Pakistan, and again, I hate to, I don't want to sound critical of some of the initiatives with China, because I know for Pakistan, this is a big source of pride that China is working closely with Pakistan. They are getting loans at the end of the day. Pakistan's been blessed with hydropower. So if you look at these different categories of power, obviously hydro dominates in Pakistan. And this is the energy mix. And so this was the Renewable Energy Share 2030. Imran Khan at the Climate Ambition Summit 2020 said that the renewable energy share should be 60%. And I guess that means total renewables. That would be by 2030, Pakistan has ambition to grow the hydro. You see it's going from 31 to 46% in the blue. So they want to grow hydro because they can, because they're blessed with that. That's going to cause other issues with water because everything's linked, right? If you have hydro, then water becomes an issue maybe. The thing that really worries me, and it did as somebody from outside who really has a love for Pakistan for lots of reasons, is when I saw the CPAC, it was all about the vast majority of the contracts were to build coal-fired power stations. Guess what? The world has moved on. Suddenly now China and other places are saying, we are not going to build any more coal-fired power stations and we will not be setting up any more. So suddenly everybody has changed, but Pakistan is locked into, as far as I know, and I've read up about this, they are locked into these coal-fired power stations and they're going to run, and whatever happens, those loans have been, to build those, they will supply the energy. The problem you've got is the fact the local coal versus the imported coal. Okay, so obviously imported coal, that's not good for the economy. Local coal is called lignocite. It's in the Tar region. Everybody knows Tar has 300 years worth of coal. The issue you have is it's very poor quality coal. When you burn the tar coal, it's high in sulfur. And what happens then is you will cause a massive pollution problem in Tar. I would not want to live anywhere near Tar when those things fire up, right? Because when which way the wind is blowing, it's going to cause a huge health crisis or problem. Sorry, I don't use this crisis. People say you are overly dramatic about saying this. I would just say Pakistan had a massive opportunity to go into renewables without going into coal. We didn't even have to go towards coal. Okay? We could have gone straight to renewables because that's what the rest of the world is doing now. Right? So again, please make up your own mind. And if anybody thinks I'm being biased, I'm using my knowledge as a scientist to look at a situation, and I'm trying to take the emotion out of it. But as someone who's really admires Pakistan, Pakistan has so many amazing things, right? These sorts of things really annoy me because it's something that I feel, why is the science community not, advising the people who are higher up there who make these decisions? Why are these decisions? I'm sure people are going to talk about corruption in a minute, but my point is, in many advanced countries, what is now happening is the scientists are advised by people who know the science, who understand the effects of what will happen. They know that, tar coal is dirty. Next slide, please. I'm going to go a bit faster. USAID, quite a while ago, they did a wind survey. So the purple and the brown shows where Pakistan has high potential for wind. So what they did, 50 meters up, they surveyed the wind speed. And they found in Balochistan and down in Sindh, probably where Tar is down there somewhere, the wind speed is really good. And let's hope when the power stations fire up, the wind is not blowing in your direction, right? But it shows that Pakistan has got 11,000 megawatts of exploitable wind power if you set up wind turbines in the correct areas. Fantastic. Fantastic. Next slide, please. And the same when we look at solar. So let's go, which is the best one? So the dark one, the darkest one, and the reddest one, like the hot region, it shows hot. That's where there's the biggest potential for solar. Again, Balochistan does really well, and up in the north frontier, there is huge potential for solar up there because there's such a good intensity of sunshine. And this is from USAID, it's all published. The nice thing about solar is the price of solar panels has like 99% of the price, like from what it was 45, 50 years ago, the price has become mega cheap now. So solar has got huge potential. And of course, we know actually there's other things like micro hydro turbines, which are going on in these mountainous areas. But of course, they're not necessarily all year round. So there's a slight issue there. Next slide, please. We'll go a bit faster. Okay, let's talk about the diaspora. These people who families left Pakistan, and then how are they doing? Now, when I used to come as a child to Lahore to visit my relatives, they thought that we are in England and everything is amazing and the streets are paved with gold and we are just doing nothing all day. I was going to talk to you about what's going on in the UK. You need to know. Pakistanis need to be told what's going on. Next, 1.4 million. We have no leadership, by the way. There's nobody really representing British Pakistanis at all. There are people who want to. Next slide.
Don't you have Anjam Chaudhry there?
There are lots of self-appointed community leaders or politicians, but they don't when my father went, his view was to go and earn money and come back to Pakistan. And the thing was, most Pakistanis right now, if you take the vast majority of Pakistanis, they're doing what I would say low-skilled jobs, driving taxis, driving buses. They're doing all those jobs. Okay, and that's part of the problem. The Pakistanis live in poorer regions. We are still marrying our cousins. So what's happening is we're importing maybe girls who are getting married or sons-in-law who probably don't have the same level of education as the people they're marrying, potentially, or maybe it's worse or better. But the point is that we are the only community that still marries their cousins from Pakistan. No other community marries their cousins from back home. Okay, nobody. So what's happened is we live in a few areas like Bradford, where I grew up, which is just like being in Pakistan. I mean, it's not like being in England at all. And what happened is a lot of the people who came in the 60s when my father came were for the uneducated people from villages in Mirpur and places like that. And so unfortunately what happened was they became very insular and they didn't really adapt or integrate at all. They didn't want to because they had everything. They've just got the Pakistan in front of them. Why should they modernize or integrate with the Gore? Why should they? And that's the problem. So, and we suffer from unconscious bias. People assume that most Pakistanis are not well educated or not as bright as the Gore, who can talk better than us. And so we are not getting those top jobs. We are a few exceptions. We don't get the good jobs. We have to work twice as hard. And actually, what this shows you, I've compared Bangladeshis and British Pakistanis. The blue one shows you where there's Bradford where I come from, which I love Bradford, by the way, Birmingham, and a few in London and Manchester. So all the Pakistanis came to work in low-skilled in the mills, drive the buses, all the low-skilled jobs in the 70s. The Bangladeshis came, in the 60s, The Bangladeshis came in the 70s and 80s. They came later. And by then, they realized we don't want to live in these places where these guys are living. Let's go to London and we spread ourselves out a bit more. And actually, the Bangladeshis, if you look, they're actually doing really well in the UK because they didn't come to those places. So even people who should be achieving the same are not achieving the same. Next slide, please. And the particular thing about Pakistanis is we don't have many friends outside of Pakistanis. That's the kind of average. We are very much keep to our own kind.
So ghetto mentality.
I don't want to use that word, but thank you for next. Okay, this is another one, right? So this is a spider chart. In red is the Pakistanis, okay? Now this one is, I'm just going to show it. They keep to their own. Guess who has the highest? 55%. So this was quite an old, this is like 2013, but it hasn't changed. So Pakistanis so we're comparing African backgrounds, Eastern European and Pakistanis, okay? And we are saying to the white population, what do you think of these people, all right? So they say, oh, we think Pakistanis keep to their own kind. They never mix with anybody. 55, we are the record holders, right?
Least trustworthy.
Well, and then in terms of threatening, I like the threatening one. Who is the most threatening? This is the one we want to win, but we don't. Pakistanis are the least threatening because we are hospitable, nice people, even when we go to the UK. The most threatening are seen as Eastern Europeans. This is like 10 years old now, so it's out of date. But I just want to say is there are stereotypes. We are put in a box, or you are a Pakistani, that means this, this, and this. You're not talking as well as the white academics, so you're not smart. There's all these kinds of stuff we are labeled. And I don't want you to feel sorry for us. Next slide. But I want you to understand, even we compare Indians. So the issue with Indians and Pakistanis is Indians put education much higher. Even the ones who go overseas to Pakistan, to Britain. By the way, Americans are completely different. Americans are spread out. American Pakistanis, they are doing really well because they've integrated into America because they're spread out all over America. So they don't have a problem integrating. It's the Pakistanis in Britain that have a problem. So if we look at GCSE performances, but the worst attaining, 55% of children, and this is grades, I think it's percentage achieving a C in English and Maths, right? So it's what percentage achieved a C in English and Maths? 55% of British Pakistani boys are right at the bottom, right? So Pakistan is doing worse than Indians. And I just want you to ask that question. Why, when they go to a foreign country, Indians go, Pakistanis go, why are Pakistanis doing worse? They can't be any less smart. I'm sure there's nothing genetic. It's purely about how we behave or how we have gone there and then how we've decided to live our lives and where we are living. And there are lots of factors. 81% of British Indian girls are achieving a grade, a C or above in English and maths. And again, this is a few years old. I mean, this is like, a few years old, but the numbers haven't changed much. I can guarantee it. But I just want you to see, next slide. Okay, I'm going to go a bit quicker because I know that talking about British Pakistanis is not for everybody's cup of tea. Another thing to say is if you go in with the same A-levels, you come out with a slightly worse degree. Even though you went in with the same A-levels and you go and do the degree and you come out with a slightly less, you've got less chance if you're a Pakistani of coming out with the same degree as somebody who went in who's white with the same grades as you in A-level. How can that happen? Is it because we don't like universities or we don't fit in? It might be. They are very white institutions. It might be that we are subject to bias from the people who are assessing us. I mean, it shouldn't be like that. And actually, exams are now designed so that you can't tell who the person is, right? But there are other forms of assessment that are not hidden, right? So you know who the person is. But clearly, there's a problem. And when you look at black students, it's even worse. Okay, I'm going to fast forward. I might skip a few slides. Let's go, and I'll tell you how many to skip. Okay, so the summary really here is still a lot of people who came over to England still don't even speak English. Especially the older generation, many of them never bothered to learn English, right? Which is a crying shame, really. And now, of course, I think in particular, the levels of females who work is a half of the level of females who work who are white British females. So it's a 50% of their ratio are working for British Pakistani women compared to white women. And in particular, why are boys underachieving? This is something that really troubles me. And there is definitely nepotism. In every area, there's glass ceilings. I know we have an Indian Prime Minister in the UK, but there are real glass ceilings. If one person gets through, that doesn't mean that these things have gone away. They still exist, okay? Thank you. Let's move on. I'm just going to try and end now a little bit on some of the more positive aspects. I know, so don't worry, you're getting there. Okay, next. So look, I'm an academic. I think, we at UPSIGN, the charity that I am a member of, I'm no longer the chairman. We work with universities. We think in Pakistan there is huge potential. You have a lot of youth we discussed. There's massive potential to really transform Pakistani universities. We think that British Pakistanis could play a role in that, and we'd love to be involved in that and work in partnership with Pakistani academics to do that, with the HEC, who I visited yesterday, and organisations of the British Council, who really are interested in uplifting education in Pakistan. And I visited them this morning, and they were really receptive to some of the things we're doing. But universities have got a thing. We've got to help the politicians. We've got to train these people who decide on the policies in the country. This is what scientists need to do. We need to help the public to understand about the science. We need to explain to them why we are doing this science. What is the benefit, or we need to enthuse children, particularly in education. And I think the Black Hole, by the way, does an amazing job. I think some of the stuff you're doing with schools, and I'm really happy to really do my little bit to support that when I can. And so it's really important, and universities also, we can help. The third sector is like when you have natural disasters and things like that, where there are issues so we know about the floods in Pakistan, and now everybody's talking about climate change and how we are going to stop this disasters happening again, and we call this resilience building, yeah? Now, these are subjects that Pakistan should have been doing a long time ago. They're already very mature, and again, I think that because you shouldn't reinvent the wheel again, I would like to hope that Pakistanis are reaching out more internationally and can use some of the knowledge that's been gained from many countries that have suffered disasters and have found solutions to some of those issues. And I hope that happens. Next slide, please. I'm going to wrap up now. Okay, some of the best things I like about what's happening, this is a great example, and I spoke about this earlier today when I spoke, is that talking to children about science or enthusing them in science. The Black Hole does a great job. Sabi Anwar and his father before him do an amazing job with the Lahore Science Mela, and I think that all cities in Pakistan should be doing this kind of activity, getting the next generation interested. Hopefully they can then solve some of these problems. Next slide, please. I'm just going to wrap up, I hope, in the next couple of minutes. Okay, so this Okay, I'll just quickly talk about this. So one of the things that my charity has identified is these are some amazing British Pakistani trainers. And so they're people who work in universities in UK, okay? And they're British Pakistanis, and they work in education. And so one of the things we've been doing, working with partners like British Council and Quaid-e-Azam University and HEC will be the future, is actually to develop short face-to-face training which we are going to scale up over the next 3 years. And so we're just closing the whole financial side of that now. And the idea is, and we did a pilot in August, I was here, and we did a 1-week pilot, and we basically trained college lecturers of affiliated colleges of universities, so they're not quite, there's a different level to the university lecturers, in what we call basic pedagogy, which is in STEM in particular, and how you include girls, because we want more girls to get into science and engineering and maths, and also different techniques, modern techniques for teaching, okay? And even some of the professors could probably do with this in the UK, to be honest, right? Because nobody teaches us how to teach. So we did this with 44 trainers, and we are going to scale up, and Madhya Sajid, who's right at the top, is the lead of this, okay? She's going to lead this. She's a very passionate British Pakistani. If you ever meet her, you'll know what I mean. And we will bring people over, they'll work in partnership with Pakistanis, and we'll create the master trainers who will be in-country master trainers, and we will be training up to 4,000 staff and about 560 master trainers. That's the program. We call it Train the Trainers. So when Madhya developed this program, she did it with Pakistani academics to make sure it was fit for purpose. Not somebody in UK thinks they know what to teach. No, we don't work like that. We always work in partnership with Pakistanis. It's really important. I'm going to finish so one of the things we often talk about, and I was talking today to some students at Quaid-e-Azam, thank you for Sadia for introducing me. I was talking about how science, we don't have to develop very expensive solutions to local problems. We need to look at local problems. Science and universities can play a role in that. We can develop low-cost solutions. These are examples from India. Low-cost solutions to some of the things. And I think Pakistanis are the most creative and inventive people. If there's something that is a problem or something that's expensive and we need to get a way around it, we are the champions of doing that kind of thing, I believe. I believe it's a real strength of Pakistanis. So we should be really encouraging entrepreneurs. So another training that we're looking at is training people around technology transfer in the universities and how they need to sort of try and work with industries. There's another training that we're hoping will come. Maybe I'll talk about that another time. Next slide. Let's get to the last one. Keep going. We won't talk about sodium batteries today. Okay, that slide at the end. Okay, so these are the summary points. And first of all, thank you for listening as well. So Pakistan has its challenges. British Pakistanis are underachieving because even though we live in the West, we are subject to lots of things. And I think that there is expertise amongst the few people who are doing really well in academia in Pakistan, who are British Pakistanis. They're very passionate. And I think if we can work together, the Pakistani academics here, with British Pakistani academics and trainers and teachers, I think we can learn a lot. I think it's a two-way thing, actually. I learn a lot. Working in Pakistan, I learned a lot. Many of you don't know this, but I was involved in a research center here. And I learned how people cope with less, and they can do more when they have less. So one of the things about the UK is if I want chemicals, I can get them. Here, they have to be very clever about where they get chemicals, the purity, and how they source it. So I'm so impressed with the ability and the creativity of students here. But what we do need to do is globalize Pakistan more. We need Pakistan not to be out of touch. It's been out of touch for years. I've been a visiting prof since 2008 in ComSats. And all I saw was people were scared to come, the terrorism, everything. So Pakistan has became isolated. We need to open Pakistan again. Look, the England cricket team was here, right? The England cricket team can come back. I'm not saying we should take all the bad things, but we need to find the good, bring it to Pakistan, don't reinvent the wheel. We all need to take personal responsibility in terms of what our contribution is to that. And obviously education, as I've shown you today, is something that is a real challenge. And doing small solutions is fine, but we have to think bigger because the problem is massive. And so scaling up training is really what we should focus on, scale up. Anybody can do a little pilot like we did, but can you scale it up to 4,000 teachers? That's the challenge. How do you do that? And we have solutions, inshallah. We should share, and we should not expect anything in return. There's a phrase that I remember. When somebody does something for you, the other person says, "Oh, yaar san, we kuch do na." And you should actually, you're supposed to laugh now. Well done. The point is, oh, that was horrible. The point is, people always expect something in return. When they do you a favor, they always expect something in return. Why can't people just do something and not expect anything in return? Is that possible? Can we do it? I mean, we're supposed to be Muslims, right? So we should not have to even expect anything in return, right? And I think this mentality, you know, the whole, we should solve local issues, we should evidence-based. When we invest in our energy and our infrastructure, we need to use evidence-based. This is what science is, evidence-based. Then we act after the evidence. We need to build the capacity in home. We don't want to rely on outsiders. Build capacity here in Pakistan, use local resources. We need to focus on impact. Universities are obsessed with publications. Publications. What we need is to do impact, which means we need to do activities that make a difference to the life of the people in Pakistan. Otherwise, why are you chucking all this money at universities if they have no effect on society? So the next set of promotions should be focused on other things, not just publications. I'll be honest, I published 200 papers. I don't really have much interest in them anymore. I'm more focused on impact. And this is how the rest of the world is thinking now. So why Pakistan needs to catch up, you know? And we need to look at environmental issues. We've got huge pollution issues. And many of them have technological solutions in science. And if you want some examples, I'll maybe talk later. I'm going to stop there. I know this was a bit of a hodgepodge of a talk, right? I know that, I get it. But for me, it was a kind of experiment because I want just people to be aware. I want you to make your own decisions about what you think is needed in Pakistan. I'm sure we're going to get lots of interesting comments. Thank you again, Sadia, and thank you to the Black Hole, and it's a real pleasure to come back.
Thank you, sir. It's very interesting, very enlightening. Sir, the problems that we have, as I see them, maybe I'm wrong, we have a big problem of brainwashing in our system, in our education, you know, no critical thinking. There is persecution complex. The whole world has nothing better to do than plot conspiracies against us. No critical thinking in our education system. And we have worked very hard to cultivate India's hostility. So our Urdu papers religiously describe India as the eternal enemy, Azli Dushman. So these are some of the problems that we have, and we are not willing to reconsider our position on these issues.
Okay. I'm definitely not going to say anything about that India thing because I'm a British guy and I definitely can't comment about that. I think we should focus on our own problems. I agree with you that we should not blame the world. I actually think sometimes they see me coming from UK, and some people actually get a complex because they think, they actually get defensive because they feel, no, things are okay, you know, they're not good. They're not good. We should just look, you know, Pakistanis are so generous. You know, you give more money to charities and things like that. Obviously, you give money to religious charities. I would love to see people do two things. Give more money to support other types of charities. And number two, why don't you volunteer your time? You know, volunteering your time is actually worth a lot. But of course, it doesn't come under the definitions of donation in many people's minds. I give up my time. Because I think my time, if you are an educated person, your time and what you can do with that time is worth more than cash. It definitely is. So I hear what you're saying. I'm not going to comment on India, but I think we should just focus on our own problems. There are some things that we can't control. One of them is the whole corruption issues. We can't control that. Maybe, okay, you can vote in politicians and vote them out. But in terms of, I'm talking about science, technology, local problems, solutions, these things could be done without involvement of higher ups in some way. You know, we can get together, we can coordinate. I mean, that's what I did in the UK. I'm not bigging myself, I've got to be careful, it would sound like I'm bigging myself up. What I mean is, if people can coordinate themselves together, then that critical mass can do more than the individual can. And I think critical mass and cooperation and coordination of things is actually a challenge, and if you can overcome that challenge, maybe we can do more with less.
Amazing lecture. I just want to comment something that there is a mindset. We have a mindset of resistivity. We just resist the someone trying to do better things and trying to improve Pakistan. We just resist it, and we are like reasoning of cultural reasons and religions. We just put forward it, and we say that we don't need to change ourselves. Don't do this. You are putting another mindset to our country and blah blah all that. So I think first of all we should change that mindset of youth, and then you can implement things, because there are many people those want to change the black hole. Sir came from America. He left America and all that. He came here for Pakistani. There are people that want to change Pakistan, but we have that mindset of resistance. We resist change.
Well, I mean, I don't want to disagree with you there. I mean, I think well spoken, and I think you should get a round of applause. For me, anyway, you do. So, well spoken.
Your lecture was very good, very eye-opening, enlightening, and all that. But all these solutions you have proposed, it is a very good solution. But then there's a lack of will to execute them.
Oh, okay. So what I'll tell you is, outside of, the funny thing is, people who live outside of Pakistan, they are very passionate about Pakistan. And all I'll say is the people who I know are very passionate about doing things, but of course they live outside. And so the agriculture specialist I talked about, who developed the app, I mean, he's given up his own money, and he's not even that rich. And he gave up his own money, his time, his family time, and he developed an app because he has a passion for Pakistan. The Madia, the lady who did the training, she's incredibly passionate about Pakistan, and it's like a huge thing for her. And so what I'm saying is, there's people outside Pakistan who want to do something because they love Pakistan and they love coming. We get the benefit of being able to come here when we work as well, so we have a lot of nice experience, to be honest. The hospitality and the people are so amazing. So from our side, all I can say is that there's no resistance. I think from the Pakistan side, I think there are always people who, there's bureaucracy. And sometimes, my biggest problem right now with these programs we're trying to do is actually the bureaucracy. It's not the will. Everybody wants to work with us and partner with us, generally speaking. But the issue is we have to go through, the British, unfortunately, started this rubbish, all this bureaucracy. And so now, don't even get me started talking about the issues I've been hearing in the last 2 days, but it's mind-blowingly difficult to do certain things. So, all I can say is I don't see people not keen. I see people only happy and keen, except when they feel a bit threatened that their position may be weakened somehow because somebody else is giving input. I understand that. That's kind of a natural human emotion, right?
Actually, just as he mentioned, when we try to propose a solution which can improve the country, then sometimes we get some comments can also include, why don't you go abroad? Why don't you go back to your country?
Interesting. Thank you. Thank you for your comment.
I had a question. You compared that the British Pakistani working women, and you said they were 50% of the white working women. How is it in the other South Asian communities? So Indian women, Bangladeshi.
I think it was on that slide. Bangladeshis. So the answer is I don't remember because I didn't the slide. I'm pretty sure Indians will be much higher. So the number for white women, I think it was something like 70%, and then Pakistan is like 30-something percent. It's roughly half, 33, 35. And I think other groups, certainly Indians, would be working more. It may not be at the level of white women, but generally, we know that Indians who came over, Indians who come now, my neighbors are Indians, they're IT specialists, they're earning big bucks. So the difference is the Indians that came overseas were pretty much mainly educated ones, coming from really good degrees and offering a lot to the UK. The Pakistanis, we sent over all the people from the villages with no education, and I went to school with their kids, and I'll tell you, I got no education to a certain age, because I went to school with these kids. It was like survival was the biggest thing, not education, survival. because they were just not interested in education at all. But you know, these are the things you have to go through in life, right? I mean, it is what it is.
There was an assistant professor of mathematics in Quaid-e-Azam University. He used to tell his students that I teach you reluctantly, with utmost reluctance, because mathematics is un-Islamic subject, you know. So even mathematics is un-Islamic. And then he fell sick, he had diabetes, and he used to go to a physician who advised him to go for honey. So he went for honey and he died.
Okay, how do I answer that question? Look, what worries me is, you know, there are certain issues around culture and religion, and I'm not going to get into them because this is not the place, and I don't want to attract that sort of attention. But let's take one example, mental health. In our community, mental health is a huge stigma. The girl or the boy, if they have mental health problems, they can't get a rishta. And what do? We assume that they've got jinn, possession. So they have to go through some bizarre things where they get, yeah? Well, I don't know what they do. But what I'm saying is that, you know, we need to bring ideas from modern ideas about how we think about mental health. And of course, in the Western world, mental health is thought of very differently, and the way it's treated is very different. And of course, here I'm sure people get treated well, but you know, in vast majority of community, even actually in the Pakistani community or in England, these ideas still prevail, by the way. So what I said in the West, I meant not in the Pakistanis in the West, depending where they live. That, you know, the mindsets are still like inko jinn hai, inko nikalna hai, all this stuff. So, you know, come on, we need to. This is why I talk about Pakistan needs to globalize, and Pakistanis overseas need to globalize, depending on where they live. And you know what I really think is if we can improve the reputation of Pakistan as well. So as a British Pakistani, I am affected by the reputation of Pakistan as well, believe it or not. You don't see that, but I see it. And so I have to fight against the stereotypes of what people think a Pakistani is. And basically, we all need to set a good example, is what I mean. Truth, honesty, all these things that you all know, but is this being implemented? And when somebody says, degree, honde paame jali degree hoye, I mean, you know, we laugh. The academic culture is not like that. Academic culture is on evidence, on merit, on facts, and backing up your argument. And you should not be afraid of criticism. Right? If another academic criticizes me or my ideas or my work, I will argue with them and we'll have a good debate. And at the end, somebody else will decide, the reviewer of the editor of the journal or whatever. And I welcome that because I'm not afraid of anybody challenging anything I say because it's a discussion. And so you shouldn't feel threatened if somebody disagrees with you. You should take it as a challenge.
Okay, sir, I have two questions. First question.
Ek allowed hai.
Okay, sir, I have two questions. And the first question is, sir, what is your opinion and what is your thinking about in past what has Britain has done with subcontinent? So what do you think about that thing and that mindset? One question. And the other is question is that like you're saying, you guys have left Pakistan and you guys have built a mini Pakistan there as well. So how we can change this cultural thing that you guys have built mini Pakistan over there? So it's very difficult to change the original Pakistan is over here. So these 2 points I have.
So the second question I'll answer first, and then you can remind me what the first question was, because I only have a memory for like one question at a time. So what we need, how do we solve these ghettos, as somebody called, not me, I didn't say it, he said it. We need to bring modern Pakistanis like you to live and show them that the world has moved on. You know, Pakistanis here are more advanced than the people who live where I grew up. They are still in 1962. Right? You guys are modern Pakistan, you're more modern than they are. You need to come over and, I don't know, marry some British Pakistanis and show them that modern, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that second one, actually. I'm just giving you a joke answer. What was the first one?
Sir, the first question was about British rule,
British rule,
colonialism,
okay.
and the
God.
East India
Right.
Company, and
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
all.
yeah. So
what do you think about that?
Totally, let's be honest, the history is there. I don't need to tell you history. Exploitation on a grand scale, the empires, many countries had empires. Exploitation on a grand scale. What the British left here when they left was they left some ways of working, the railways, okay, other things they created through the labour here, whatever. They had ways of working that still remain, and they don't remain in the UK, but they still remain here. So they left a legacy, and they're still here. The British Council is still here, other places still here, and you know, the Britain still likes to show the rest of the world its values. What are the British values? You know what the British values are, right? I hinted at some of these values. We still feel in Britain that we have a place in the world. The question is, does the world really care about Britain anymore? You look at India. We are so keen to work with India. We're so desperate to do business with India. And we've created lots of great avenues. Students can come now very easily. And you know, but does India care about the UK, is the question. I don't think so. I think India's doing very well itself. And so we've got this thing where the tables have been turned. That isn't happening with Pakistan. So you've got to ask yourself, why isn't Britain desperate to work with Pakistan like they are with India? And so these, again, I want you to think about that, right? Because the tables have definitely turned, I believe. The empire and now the relationship with India and other countries where there is Australia. We are really keen to work with Australia, Brazil, Canada. So these emerging nations who are set to really fly and become, the biggest economies in the world. Pakistan, was it 5th most populous country in the world, something like 5th or 6th? And yet, why are people not rushing to come here? Okay, you just have to ask yourself the question. It's not for me to even tell you. You need to think about it. And I'm not going to say it because you have to think about it. So I think that answers your question, right? I like to think that they gave these values. I was going to talk about the NHS. So what Britain has shown us, and the NHS is ridiculously expensive, but what it showed the rest of the world was these, what I call Islamic values that people often tell me these are Islamic values, which is to caring for the needy, and everybody has a right to health, and there are many poor people in Britain, don't get me, there are people living below the poverty line, especially with the cost of living has gone massively up now. Energy bills are doubling, tripling now. But I think British society does care for its people at a level that I hope others would emulate. And the NHS is a great example. I'm a huge fan of the NHS, but it is totally run out of money. And the last time I went to hospital, I took them 10 hours to actually treat me in the accident emergency, which was not a nice experience because my shoulder had dislocated. And so I had 10 hours of screaming agony. So that's my experience recently, but I still love the NHS and all the staff are amazing.
Thank you very much for talking about the global challenges and the opportunities you are creating. And you talk about the UK diaspora that it is creating. My question is what Pakistan diaspora all over the world is doing. Are they only sending remittances, or they are also creating opportunities like this? And if there are other organizations who are creating opportunities like you are doing, why don't you collaborate and catalyze the whole process? Because it's the thing you're doing is long term, it's time taking.
Yeah.
If you find like-minded people and collaborate with them, it might do the job in
Interesting, yeah.
short span of time.
When we set up UPSIGN 5 years ago, suddenly the American academic groups started saying, well, this is really interesting, what these guys are doing. And I think this became like a role model. I think in America now, there are groups forming, and they contact us and they just have a little chat, and we sort of keep updated. So there are people who feel equally passionate in America. America, mainly I have heard from Americans, because there's obviously a high percentage. People are doing well in America. They're educated, they've got a lot of money now, they're earning big money. So I think that the remittances thing is really interesting, because whenever I used to go to the High Commission in London, and the Deputy Prime Minister or whoever, somebody would come from the government, and all they would talk about is remittances. So they make us feel like we're and have it here, because this is a short-term thing that politicians think about. The long-term, the question you've got to ask yourself is, do the politicians in all countries, or any country, even the UK, do they really think about the long-term? Or actually, are some of those decisions in the UK are probably taken outside of government in a way, because there are bodies that are autonomous, like the funding bodies and the other bodies. They basically run themselves. They get a budget from the government, but they basically run themselves. And I think that's because politicians always have short-term objectives to get re-elected. So, remittances is part of trying to help with the fact that Pakistan's got huge issues with the amount of imports and issues and balance of payments. I'm not a financial expert. I sound like I am, but I'm not. So, that's part of that, right? To have that money in Pakistan. I think, I think that's it, really. I mean, we would love to partner with others, but obviously, what we do is actually quite small, remember, right? The number of people we will train in the next 3 years is really tiny compared to the size of the problem. But what we want to do is to show how it can be done, and then we would like others to learn from our learnings. Yeah, that's really what it's about. It's about showing an example and then saying, here it is, this is how you do it. Does anybody else want to do it?
I would also like to ask you about a large number of Pakistanis are living abroad.
Achha.
Or abhi ja bhi rahe hain. At least I don't know the statistics actually, but approximately 92% of the youth is willing to go abroad, and in the recent few months, a large number of people have gone outside. So, what about the situation of brain drain that we call?
Yeah, well, the brain drain definitely didn't happen in the UK because you just sent uneducated people to the villages. So that definitely wasn't a brain drain, I'll say that. Is it going to happen with the youth? Yes, it might. But I think even if they go and work abroad, they always remember Pakistan. And I think many of them are involved in charitable projects and things. People never lose that love, do they? Never. So I think you will always get back something. Most of the people who went for PhDs, they pretty much came back in the past. They were bonded, I know. But then a lot of them felt a real wish to come back and contribute because they got that benefit of that education because of Pakistan funded that. So yes, it's very attractive to go there, but I think it is an inevitable thing, and it might. At the moment, what I'm saying is I don't think the diaspora has enough opportunities. Prime Minister Imran Khan did try to raise the profile of British Pakistanis. He gave them more status than they ever had before, didn't he? I don't want to make political, but it's a truth, right? Before Imran Khan, nobody cared about British Pakistanis at all. You never heard people talking about giving them any kind of status. And maybe, I don't know if he went too far or not. Maybe people didn't like that, I don't know. But what I would say is it's good to look after your diaspora because they will love Pakistan and they will come here. And so it's not a bad thing that people go. And maybe they can be ambassadors for Pakistan. I always say to people, I said it earlier today, that because I had some very, very good people come from Pakistan and some really horrible people come as students or people who visited me. And some of them were great ambassadors for Pakistan, and the way they conducted themselves, their behaviors, and some of them weren't. So all of you, if any of you go overseas, please, the youth in particular, just be the best you can be and be a great example for Pakistan. And you guys are great anyway. I'm sure you will be.
Thank you, sir, for insightful discussion. मैं सिर्फ सर अपॉर्चुनिटीज़ के बारे में बात करूँगा और वो भी उर्दू में.
चलो जी मैं पंजाबी से जवाब दे रहा हूँ.
Far flung area of Chitral. I grew up speaking Chitrali, then I learned to speak Urdu, and now struggling with English. So some majority of the students in Pakistan are oscillating between Urdu and English. So you are lucky to speak British accent. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Sir, I am doing PhD at NUST.
Achha.
Yes, and I am working on wastewater management through microalgae.
Yeah.
This is a basic major issue for future.
Yeah.
So the basic issue we are facing right now here is, as you talked about, the capacity building, the human resource issue.
Yeah.
We have at NUST, very highly advanced equipment.
Yep.
Everything is there,
Yeah.
but no one is there to operate them. This is a major challenge. That is why, as you belong to also academy, I want to ask you how we can bridge this gap. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, look, what Pakistan's been doing over the last few years, I have just observed, and you will observe, they've been building lots of universities, but they haven't really invested in they build a building and then it's tick box. And again, this is more, I would say, on the political side, to show we have built 10 new universities this year. And so you know that, right? I'm not saying something controversial, hopefully, because I don't want to get arrested when I go outside from somebody, right? I will be careful what I say. So the point is that the university is not just about the buildings, it's about the quality and quantity of the things that you put in it and the support. And often that is the last thing, you know, the support to operate equipment and stuff and the training and all of that. But again, these things you can do. And I'll tell you, in COVID time, I lost a lot of people, they didn't die, sorry, they just went on to do other jobs, But all the knowledge, so in my group, there's a huge amount of knowledge that we need to run my group. I didn't have anything written down. No, I had a few things written down. I didn't have any, so these people left, and then all the new people came, and they didn't know how to do anything. So what I did, and I've been doing anyway for years, is develop standard operating procedures. So when a new person comes, they can just follow this standard operating procedure. Actually, I went to NUS, to the Energy Centre, and I talked to them about standard operating procedures and training and things like this. And so these things exist. And what I also did was I created videos of literally everything we do. We created videos of it, and we're still creating videos of it. So that when anybody comes in new, somebody joins my group for PhD, it takes 6 months to a year to acquire the knowledge. Now, I can't get everybody, so the only people who can train them is other people, postdocs, PhDs. And I asked them nicely, would you mind training this person, or would you mind? And so now we got to the point where a lot of things are just on video. So before they even come anywhere near the lab, they got the video, the SOP, and everything else. And they have to then prove they are doing we can test them on stuff, right? So when they show that they are इस काबिल हैं कि इनको जाने दे लैब में इनको ट्रेन करें कि इसका टाइम ज़ाया करें तो फिर हम उनको then we let them. And so really so in your university what they should do, somebody should do the training once, they could video it, they could produce the SOPs, and then it's much a lower barrier to entry to start using difficult equipment or stuff like that. And if you want examples of SOPs or anything like that, I'm very happy to give you the sort of stuff we do. My life with SOPs, which is a very quality management thing, it's not a science thing, started when I worked in the UK in a centre that was developing biomaterials, and they had SOPs for everything because it was like medical materials. So they had to have accreditation and SOPs. So they literally wrote every step down, of every procedure in great detail. And you have to follow it. And this is how you have quality control. This is something in industry. And you can do this. Why can't you do the same in academia and training? You can do the same. But of course, people have to make the link. Why don't we use this idea? It's just an implementation problem. It's not a knowledge problem. It's an implementation.
Thank you so much. अच्छा सर, मैं मंडी बाउद्दीन से बिलोंग करता हूँ, एक गांव है डोका सब हमारा, हम 3 भाई हैं सर. बेसिकली जो मैंने कुछ प्रॉब्लम्स और इश्यूज देखे हैं एजुकेशन सिस्टम में, वो मोस्टली स्टूडेंट्स को अवेयरनेस की कमी है. ठीक है, जैसे आप हैं या ग्रुप ऑफ पीपल जो एक ऊपर चले गए हैं, एजुकेट हो चुके हैं, वो क्यों ना एक हर गांव में एक अवेयरनेस की कैंपेन की जाए, क्योंकि उनको बताया जाए स्टूडेंट्स को कि ये मुश्किल नहीं है, इट्स वेरी इजी. और एक मैं आपको छोटी सी एग्जांपल देता हूँ. मेरे साथ एक स्टूडेंट पढ़ते होते थे और वो टॉपर थे, लाइक 1000 प्लस उनके नंबर आए थे. और 2 साल पहले मैं उनको जाके मिला हूँ तो वो डेरे पे भैंसों को चारे ही डाल रहे थे, मतलब वो कुछ भी नहीं किया. तो वो मैं देख के मुझे बड़ा बुरा फील हुआ कि यार इतना एक इंटेलिजेंट और लाइक स्टूडेंट और वो भी इस तरह पीछे जा सकता है. और सेकेंडली, क्या वो ग्रुप ऑफ पीपल एक जो इंटेलिजेंट स्टूडेंट्स हैं, जो हाई मार्क्स ऑब्टेन करने वाले स्टूडेंट्स हैं, उनको आगे यूनिवर्सिटीज़ में क्यों नहीं एक्सपोर्ट कर सकते या फिर एक इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर बनाएं कि उन स्टूडेंट्स को
अभी दो क्वेश्चन पूछ रहे हैं ना, वन एट अ टाइम कर रहे हैं, ठीक है ना। तो दूसरा वाला करें पहले, राइट। तो क्यों ना जो स्टूडेंट्स ब्राइट है, जिनके पास पैसे, उनको इंकरेज करें, ठीक है ना। सो आई वाज रिसेंटली कॉन्टेक्ट बाय हबीब यूनिवर्सिटी, उनके वाइस चांसलर, तो मेरी मीटिंग थी उनकी, ऑनलाइन थी उनके साथ। और ये आजकल मॉडल्स आ रहे हैं जो फिलैंथ्रोपी, जो लोगों के पास पैसा है, कराची में दीज प्लेसेस, दे आर ट्राइंग टू सेट अप यूनिवर्सिटीज जिसमें फ़ी पेइंग स्टूडेंट्स होते हैं, जो बेस्ट स्टूडेंट्स होते हैं, और एक वो जो एंडाउमेंट्स लेते हैं लोग, जो देते हैं बिग सम्स ऑफ मनी, वो एंडाउमेंट रहती है, उससे इंटरेस्ट से वो, या उनकी जो फ़ी पेइंग स्टूडेंट्स हैं उनसे, उनका मॉडल है बेसिकली लाइक मैंने कहा सोशल एंटरप्राइज। वो टीच भी कर रहे हैं, लेकिन जो एक परसेंटेज होता है जिसमें वो बच्चे जिनके पास पैसे नहीं है, जो टॉपर्स हैं, जो बहुत अच्छे स्टूडेंट्स हैं, दे कैन गेट एडमिशन। और ये मॉडल, ये दीज मॉडल्स प्रॉब्ली ऑलरेडी एग्जिस्ट बाय द वे, मैंने जस्ट पहली बार सुना है हबीब का, और ये जो कर रहे हैं, आई एम जस्ट वेरी इंटरेस्टेड, and I'm sure Saadi and others could tell us of some other models that are going on in Lahore or other places. I'm sure they are, but I think those types of philanthropic models जो है, क्योंकि लोग पैसा देते हैं, people support करते हैं education, and just imagine how many geniuses there must be in Pakistan who are not receiving it, potential geniuses जो इनको education नहीं मिला, ये numbers मैंने आपको बताए हैं। I mean, you know, there could be some seriously clever people out there who are not coming forward because they just don't have, they're not getting an education. So this is why education across the board has to happen, and I'm sure more of these geniuses will come forward. पहला question क्या था, मैं फटाफट आंसर कर देता हूँ।
Awareness campaign, because I think
Sir, I will just say to you, ये लेक्चर तो रिकॉर्ड हो गया ना, ठीक है, तो आप लोग कुछ रिकॉर्ड करें चीज़ें, go to people who are knowledgeable, जो एक्सपर्ट्स हैं, उनसे आप रिकॉर्ड करें ये चीज़ें, लेक्चर्स या जो भी लाइक अवेयरनेस की जो कैंपेन्स जो है ना, एक आप बनाएं, अच्छा सा बनाएं वीडियो या व्हाटएवर, तो वो हर गांव में शेयर करें। बिकॉज क्या होता है ना कि हर गांव में हर बंदा अपना अपना काम कर रहा है, और वो भी क्वालिटी उसकी वेरिएबल होती है, कई गाँव में बहुत अच्छा काम हो रहा है, कई में नहीं। वॉट यू नीड टू डू इज़ ऑल द विलेज, दिस इज जस्ट द मैकेनिज्म मैं कह रहा हूँ, यू ऑल नीड टू गेट टुगेदर, और पीपल नीड टू गेट टुगेदर एंड फाइंड द बेस्ट पीपल हु कैन टॉक अबाउट दीज इशूज़, एंड उससे आप एक चीज़ क्वालिटी को डेवलप, क्योंकि आजकल तो यार इंटरनेट का ज़माना है, हर चीज़ आप शेयर कर सकते हैं बाय जस्ट अ क्लिक ऑन योर फोन। सो व्हाई इज़ एवरीबडी ट्राइंग टू री इन्वेंट समथिंग? व्हाट यू नीड इज जस्ट, यू नीड इट वंस एंड यू नीड हाई क्वालिटी, एंड दैट्स काइंड ऑफ आवर मॉडल, कि आप एक बार करें, उसको सही तरह से करें, तो उसको बस कॉपी पेस्ट करें इन एज बेस्ट, बिकॉज ट्रेन द ट्रेनर्स इज़ लाइक कॉपी पेस्ट, एंड द लिमिटेशन इज द फोटो कॉपी जितना बार बार करें ना, तो एक दो फोटोकॉपी के बाद उसकी क्वालिटी कम हो जाती है। सो देयर इज़ गोइंग टू बी अ डेग्रेडेशन, लेकिन अगर शुरू से अच्छी क्वालिटी है तो फर्स्ट एंड सेकंड फोटोकॉपीज विल स्टिल बी ओके, फिट फॉर पर्पस, ठीक है ना। थैंक यू सो मच फॉर द क्वेश्चंस एंड थैंक्स फॉर कमिंग गाइस एंड फॉर laughing at the right moment. Well done.
Just one final comment. Don't ever worry about saying anything controversial in the blackboard. Yes. This is what we are here for.